D. Mace, Finken, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David Janes here with you. Willie Donick will join us momentarily. A tough one for Vanderbilt last night. Derek will get more into this when Willie joins the program. Vanderbilt gave it all it had against the number one ranked Auburn Tigers. Auburn ultimately prevails 80-68, dropping Vandy to 17-7 on the season, 5-6 in the SEC. An incredibly entertaining game. Vanderbilt clawed back from a early 15-0 hole to make it a 2-point deficit at halftime, took the lead in the second half against Auburn, but Auburn flexed its muscle, pulled away at the end. But another example of the strides that Vanderbilt has made in basketball this season versus last season.
Yeah, Coach Byington has those guys playing. The unfortunate part about it is that they're just totally undersized. That's it. If dog in you and toughness was the measurement of height, then Vandy across the board, all 7-footers with handles and can shoot, but it's not. And the reality is, even though Vandy's a good team, and in this stretch, if they get 2 more wins, because from here on out, really is top 25 teams because the SEC is so stacked. If you get 2 more victories out of this top 25 heading into the SEC tournament, you should be the coach of the year, at least in the SEC, because of what you had to retool your whole team, basically, your whole team. And you found a way to keep these guys together and play the brand of basketball that you brought here to Vanderbilt. You've been able to get those guys to do that. The problem is, again, they're just undersized. That's all. And there's no way around that. So, I mean, they played a hell of a game, at least in the first half. Second half, they couldn't buy a basket if they tried. And then ultimately, Auburn's depth and height sort of, became more of the focal point in the game than anything.
It doesn't get any easier for Vanderbilt, Derek. Their next game at number 5 Tennessee.
Okay, go with their. Just go.
You want me to read the remaining schedule?
Read and top 25 teams.
All right. This is the remaining schedule. At number 5 Tennessee, who lost to. At number 15, lost to number 15 Kentucky last night. So after the Vols, after the Commodores play at Tennessee, number 5 Tennessee, they are at number 15 Kentucky, home to number 19 Ole Miss, at number 8 Texas A&M, home to number 21 Missouri, home to Arkansas, at Georgia.
They got five out of the next 7 games.
5 of their final 7 games
are top 25 teams.
Correct.
That's why I said if Byington can get 2 wins, because this is a daunting. This is like murderer's row, basically, for Vanderbilt. A team that basically has no guy was really on the team from last year, maybe a couple, but basically a whole new team.
And incredibly, look, it's Gentry Estes of the Tennessean wrote a column about this game and talked about, of all of the years that Vanderbilt was going to have this turnaround, it had to be when the SEC might be the best conference ever in terms of the number of teams that ultimately get into the NCAA tournament. I am confident in saying that the SEC will break the record for most teams from one conference invited to the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So you can't take away from what Vanderbilt has done year over year because it's a clear turnaround. But their ceiling is lowered by the fact that they have to play a top 25 team basically every night. There are no easy games. Even one of the 2 unranked games they have left on the schedule, Arkansas has been picking it up as of late under John Calipari. So even that is not a gimme game. We will get more into Vanderbilt with Willie when he arrives. He is on his way. He was at the game last night. So we will discuss that with Willie. But Derek, I was thinking about
Mhm.
this after the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl on Sunday. The story of that game was the Eagles defense
Mhm.
wreaking havoc on the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes had no time to really do anything, was sacked, I want to say 6 times in the game on Sunday. And wouldn't you know it, shortly after that game was over, one Abdul Carter tweeted, "Defense wins championships. Number 1 overall pick, 74 days." So my question for you, Derek Mason, the Titans have a decision to make with that number 1 pick. The 3 of us on this show are on team trade the pick,
Mhm.
get more picks. But should Abdul Carter be in the mix for the number 1 pick because of the Eagles' performance in the Super Bowl? How much did the Eagles' dominance defensively, their pass rush,
Mhm.
help Abdul Carter in the draft process?
Listen, I don't blame him for, you know, shouting on the mountaintops that defenses win championships. I don't blame him for screaming that. He wants to be the number 1 pick in this year's 2025 NFL draft. That is a kid's dream. That is a athlete's dream to be taken number 1 amongst everybody that's coming out. And whether you succeed or not, no one can ever take away you were the number 1 pick in the 2025 NFL draft. That's an honor in itself. So I understand why he's screaming at the mountain, on the mountaintop that defense win championships. But the Philadelphia Eagles can say offensive line wins championships, because how many times did Kansas City get sacked? Because the
I
lack
believe it was
of
6 sacks.
the lack of a offensive line. Just reverse that. Put Philadelphia's offensive line on Kansas City's. You think even with the offensive line that Philly has now, do you think they're getting 6 sacks? I'm gonna answer that question for you. They're not getting 6 sacks. 6'6", 338. That's the average, and they're all good players. It's not like they're 6'6" Andre Dillard's out
Do
there.
you remember when they did that graphic during the Super Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
They showed the average height and weight of the Eagles' offensive line,
Mm-hmm.
and they compared it to, I want to say, the Packers' average offensive line height
Yes.
and weight from the first Super Bowl. And I believe the Eagles' average weight was nearly 100 pounds heavier than the Packers in Super Bowl I.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's a much different era, but to see those numbers side by side was eye-popping. But yes, this offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm not going to say they are literal giants, because they are not actually giants. They might be giants. Good band, by the way. They might be giants. But yes, that offensive line is the best in the NFL for a reason.
Here's sort of the argument that I would have with Abdul Carter, even though I don't mind him screaming at he wants to be the number 1 pick. The Kansas City Chiefs hit the quarterback 3 times. 3 times. They hit the quarterback 3 times. Take a guess how many times Kansas City Chiefs hit their quarterback. Philly hits Kansas City's quarterback.
15.
You were close. 11.
Okay.
11. And that's not to say just pressures, just pushing the center or the guard into the quarterback. That's not hitting them. That's just putting pressure on them. If they added the pressures with it, man, oh man, it was lopsided. And it wasn't that Philadelphia has this great, like, historic line. Their line, I don't think, is better than the 1999 Baltimore Ravens. Their line is not better than the 2000 Tennessee Titans. Their line is not better than that 2007 New York Giants defensive line. They're no better than them. They're no better than the LA Rams in their defensive line. It was just that Kansas City, and I'm not saying they're not good, because I love Jalen Carter. The kid's flat out good. They got a good defensive line. But Kansas City probably had one of the worst offensive lines that has ever competed in the Super Bowl. We haven't seen these numbers in a Super Bowl in regards to a quarterback getting sacked, hit, and everything else. I think the closest in recent memory maybe was the Legion of Doom when they played Peyton Manning, but they didn't get a lot of sacks. They got a lot of pressures, and they made them get rid of it fast. But they didn't get a lot of sacks. So I understand that. Listen, you can look at this template for Philadelphia and say defense wins championships, but then also you can look at it from the standpoint of, man, if Kansas City had Philadelphia's offensive line, this would have been a different story, a total different story. So I get it. I understand what Abdul Carter is saying and he's doing. I would do it too. But the counter argument to it is, well, if Kansas City had an offensive line, maybe this would have been a different game.
So the Eagles did not blitz once. That was a big part of the how impressive their performance was, is that they did not blitz across 42 dropbacks, according to Next Gen Stats in Super Bowl 59. 16 pressures, sacked Mahomes 6 times. So Abdul Carter has certainly seen his stock rise, I think, over the past few days because of the Eagles' performance in the Super Bowl. But then I saw the latest mock draft on ESPN.com from Field Yates, and he has Travis Hunter as the projected number 1 pick in the draft for the Tennessee Titans. And Field Yates writes, quote, the Titans have made it clear they won't force the quarterback issue at number 1 if they don't deem one of the passers worthy of the pick. Miami's Cam Ward and Colorado's Shedeur Sanders will be in the mix here, given Will Levis's struggles, but Tennessee could go another direction, and that opens the door for a spirited debate in picking between Hunter and Penn State edge rusher Abdul Carter. While there is little precedent for a prospect playing both sides of the ball in the NFL, Hunter has a rare skill set. Scouts have noted his determination and focus as reasons why he was able to play an astounding 1,458 snaps this past season. The Titans need help at both receiver and cornerback, and Hunter, who I'm ranking at corner right now, could boost either spot. He caught 15 touchdown passes and had 4 interceptions in 2024. We actually also have audio of Field Yates explaining why he went with Hunter over Carter in this position.
So, Field, how did you land on Travis Hunter as your first overall?
Yeah, versatility is where I ended up breaking the tie with Laura. I know that it's very hard to imagine a player playing both ways at the NFL level. I also can't recall a prospect quite like Travis Hunter, and a guy who I do believe has the capacity to end up being a top 5 player at either as a wide receiver or a cornerback as well. The physical fitness it requires to play both ways at the collegiate level is so rare. And I've talked about this on First Draft, and we'll continue to talk about it until we get to the draft itself, is that we talk about the prospect and the athletic skills of Travis Hunter. Scouts love the kid, too. This is a guy who made it all on the line for Colorado every single week. And that may sound just like talk and noise, but it's the truth. Like the determination it requires to be as physically fit as he was, and to go to twice the meetings as all of your teammates, and to have the mental capacity to understand what you're doing, basically in reverse from one another, right? Wide receiver and cornerback are 2 opposite positions, is such a rare thing to find that it pushes him over the edge as my number 1 prospect in the draft.
That was Field Yates explaining why he had Travis Hunter going number 1 in his latest mock draft to the Tennessee Titans. But he also mentioned in that blurb I read that he's ranking Hunter at corner right now, not receiver. And that leads to the debate. I've heard Jared have it many times. I know he's not the only one, about, is it more important to have a lockdown corner or a dominant pass rush that makes those corners' jobs easier because the pass rush is getting to the quarterback?
Listen, regardless of who you have out there at corner, if you're not getting the pass rush, then again, the way these offenses are and the complexities in these offenses, and it's scheming guys open, it's going to be very difficult for you to cover that long in the National Football League. Listen, they are not, and I know they're not trying to do it. They're trying to consciously say, well, he's going to be, I'm ranking him because he's just this. Okay, if you are ranking him just as as a cornerback, just a cornerback, just say he never played offense, because a lot of this always ties to the offense, and I understand. But just throw out the offense. Is he better than Will Johnson? And I'm not a Michigan guy, believe me, you know I'm not. But is he better than Will Johnson comparatively? If you just look at, there are some people that say, scouts that are saying Will Johnson is the best pure corner out there. Will Johnson got hurt this season. Hopefully he's healthy enough to do what he needs to do. But
Will Johnson, by the way, according to Field Yates has him going 12th to the Cowboys in his latest mock draft.
Exactly. So if you're going to, if Phil Yates is saying, I'm putting him number one because he's the corner, and no, you're not. Because if that's the case, draft Will Johnson at corner. He was ranked the number one corner, like just pure corner. He's the number one guy. But you got it with Travis Hunter, the allure is he can play offense too. It's not just if you say I'm just taking him as a receiver, you're not taking him number one. You're just not. That's why Phil Yates went to the cornerback position because, Will Johnson got hurt. The other kid that won the award, was he really better than Travis Hunter? I don't know. I think it was the LSU kid. It was somebody it may have been somebody from the SEC that won the, is it still the Outland Trophy Award? No, is it? What is the defensive back award?
I'm having to look right now. Hold on.
I think it is the Outland Trophy.
Is it the Jim Thorpe Award?
Yeah, Jim Thorpe. I'm scoring. Outland is the linebacker, I believe. Yeah, Outland's linebacker. But Jim Thorpe is the cornerback. And the kid, because Travis Hunter didn't win it this year.
It was Jahdae Barron from Texas?
Texas, yes.
Okay.
He won it. So you had the kid from South Carolina, from the SEC in Texas. So whether Phil Yates want to say it or not, if you're drafting Travis Hunter number one, you're drafting him as the athlete, not the corner, not the receiver, because he's neither number one in any just standalone category. Is he a top 2 or 3? Yes, he is. But if you're just ranking him as one position, he's not the number one corner and he's not the number one wide receiver. But because he's a top 3, 4 at both positions, you merge it together, makes him the top athlete. So, yes, if you're going to draft the top athlete, draft him. Don't tell me he's a corner. Don't just say I'm drafting number one because he's a corner. No, you're drafting him number one because the allure he brings to you on the offensive side of the ball.
Did your opinion of Abdul Carter's potential impact in the NFL change based on what you saw in the Super Bowl? Because as I said, I think that his stock has risen over the past few days because he is the clear number one pass rusher in this draft. And I am no prospect savant when it comes to the NFL. So I trust the people whose job it is to tell me whether or not Abdul Carter is a top of the line talent. And from everything that I've read, it certainly sounds that way. I don't know if the Titans trade down, how far they can trade down and still get Abdul Carter, depending on what happens with the Cleveland Browns. Because the Myles Garrett trade request, they may need a replacement, and Abdul Carter seems like a ready-made replacement for Myles Garrett, at least as closest to a replacement as you can get. So he may not get past number 2. You could trade up. You could trade down with another team. They might take one of the quarterbacks, and Abdul Carter might be gone at 2. I'm just wondering if the performance of the Eagles in the Super Bowl, showing the importance of a pass rush, makes the Titans think twice about how far, if they decide to trade down, how far they would go if it meant not getting Abdul Carter.
Again, it hasn't changed my mind on, whether, a defense having a stout defensive line can contribute highly to winning a Super Bowl, especially if you're playing against the likes of a Patrick Mahomes. It didn't change, but I knew that. I knew if you got a good defensive line, your chances of winning goes up. Look at Kansas City last year. They had a good defensive line. The Kansas City year before, they had a good defensive line. The Rams, they had a good defensive line. Tampa, they had a good defensive line. Kansas City, that year, I'm not sure they had a really good one, but it was good enough. And then obviously the Patriots of 2018 and Philly of 2017, which that defensive line wasn't great. They were a good team. They were a good turnover team in regards to them causing turnovers, but it wasn't because the defensive line was some great defensive line. So I'll go back to, listen, we can skew this anyway. And you know, maybe the Titans look at it from the standpoint of, okay, if we upgrade our defensive line, how close does that put us to our ultimate goal? Well, our first goal, and the first goal is to win the AFC North, AFC South, to win AFC South. Does getting Abdul Carter puts us closer to that, or does getting another position or Travis Hunter put us closer, and us putting him at wide receiver? Which one? Which one is going to get us closer? Well, some will tell you getting Abdul Carter is the guy. Some will tell you no, beefing up that offensive line is the way you get it. And they're leaving out Travis Hunter. So you may get some that say Abdul Carter. Listen, if they drafted Abdul Carter, I would be cool with it. But some people may say, again, get you an offensive line, and that puts you closer to that first goal, and that first goal is to win AFC South.
Quickly, Alex is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Alex, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys.
Mhm.
D-Mace, I have a question. Like, there's one thing, like, all the conference championships and Super Bowl quarterbacks, they draft and develop their quarterbacks. Yes, we should draft the D-line, but, like, the number one way to get to the Super Bowl is drafting quarterback. Like, why is it so hard for people to figure that out? It seems like there's a certain segment of the media and fan base that want to pass on Cam Ward, or because they're just not into him. And look, I'm not saying Cam Ward's going to be a star, but like, we need to draft and develop a quarterback, and I think Cam Ward's the best chance for the Titans. That's how Callahan became successful with the Bengals. I'll hang up and listen.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. And I'm going to answer this quickly because we got to go to break. It was a great question. But listen, if you don't rank these guys worthy of that number one pick, then don't draft them. If you want to move down in the draft and then ultimately get them as you accumulate some picks, then go ahead, right ahead. But if you don't believe that guy is worthy of the number one pick, then try to sort of maneuver around to whereas you're still in the spot to draft that quarterback, if indeed. But Brian Callahan's also got to understand that his job is on the line too. And if you're going to draft one of these quarterbacks, they better hit closer to Jaden Daniels than some other quarterback. Because if they don't, and I'm not saying they got to go to the AFC or NFC championship game, but what I'm saying is they have to see some real progress. And if they don't see that real progress, you ain't going to be here to develop the quarterback regardless.
615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Titans. But before we do, Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, will join us. We'll discuss the Four Nations Face-Off tournament, which starts tonight, and the Predators as well, of course. That's coming up next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, joined on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com by Predators television analyst Chris Mason. The Predators are off for the next week and a half because the Four Nations Face-Off tournament starts tonight. Canada versus Sweden. Game is at 7 o'clock. You can see Philip Forsberg and Gus Nyquist tonight. USA plays Finland tomorrow at 7 o'clock, so you can see UC Saros then. But Chris, as you look at these four teams, just give us your quick prediction. Which team do you like the most in this short round robin tournament?
Well, it's tough. I think if you look at the skaters, Canada's kind of built a little bit different because they lost Hughes. That's obviously a big loss. I think Jake Sanderson's replacing him. So I got to give them maybe the advantage with the forwards a little bit. But if you look at the U.S. team, I think they've got the best goaltending. I think Hellebuck and, that squad is pretty good. And I think Canada's goalies are a little weak, in my opinion. Hill and Binnington, I think, is going to get the first game. I believe I saw.
Binnington is starting for Canada.
He's starting. So, I don't know. That's not strong in my opinion. I think Finland to me is a dark horse. I think they're probably, if you're going on betting sites and all that kind of stuff, they're probably have the steepest odds of winning this tournament. But I love the way that they play in international tournaments. I just think they play a really solid team game. A lot of defense. I think Barkov is a good captain, good two-way center leading the way there. So, to give you an answer, I don't really have one. I don't know who I think is going to win. I'm obviously hoping for Canada, but I think Finland might upset some people. So I'm gonna take a flyer and go with Finland.
As you know, Chris, goaltending means a lot. So I'm going to go with the United States, since the United States has clearly the best goalie in the tournament in Connor Hellebuck. All right, I have a question for you. Somebody on our station, for privacy's sake, let's call him Jared S. No, that's too obvious. Let's call him Jay Stillman. Jay Stillman.
Pillman. Garrett Pillman. There you go.
We got a couple of takes I want you to respond to. I'll combine them. The first take is that Justus Annunen is better than UC Saros because Justus Annunen has won more games. The second take is that the Predators should trade UC Saros now before his contract kicks in because he's not worth the money they've invested. I'll give you the floor to respond to those takes.
Well, you can't base a goalie on wins. And a player's record it's like in baseball, a pitcher, if he has a 2.5 ERA, but they only score 1.5 runs, well, you're not going to win a hockey game. And that's been the situation with UC Saros. I'm not defending, his year and saying he's been incredible all year or anything like that, but you are a product of your environment. I think the Predators this season have probably been, one of the worst teams defensively in the league. And it doesn't matter if you have Connor Hellebuck, if everybody thinks Connor Hellebuck is the best goaltender in the world, on a team that defends as poorly as the Predators did, you're not going to have Connor Hellebuck numbers. You're going to have more in the line of what UC Saros' numbers are. I just think that's, a hot take that, he's trying to get attention. I saw his one tweet or something, the most overrated player in Nashville sports history. And it's just ridiculous. I don't even think he watched the game the night before. So, it's understanding the, complete landscape of everything. Would you be saying that about Sergei Bobrovsky because he has 18 or 20 wins or whatever he has, but he's got, a worse save percentage and goals against average than UC Saros? Well, no, he's won a Stanley Cup. He's, lost his starting job a few times. Everybody thought he was done when he first got the floor, and he, revived his career. He's making $10 million. He makes $10 million a year. It doesn't really, to me, it's such a bad hot take, because there's no way that you could just say Justus Annunen's better than UC Saros because he has more wins. He got a lot of those when he was playing with Colorado, and his numbers weren't very good there, but they score 5 goals a game. So what are you going to do? You can let 4 goals in and win a hockey game, and that's just not the case with UC Saros. And I think even at Saros's deal for 8 years at 7.5 is still so undervalue that it's not even funny. I mean, it's just going to go up from here. What did Shesterkin just sign for? What, $11 million?
Thereabouts.
So I think his contract in the 8 years is a bargain, if you ask me, for the caliber of UC Saros. I think he's 8th in career save percentage and active goaltenders. He's a top 10 guy. So I just, because he's maybe not having the best year right now, I just think that's a weak take. Who are you going to replace him with? Justus Onanen? Is that what he wants to do?
That is Jared's take, that he thinks it could be Onanen because he's won more games, therefore he's better. And if he stinks, you go find the next guy, and then you go find the next guy.
Yeah, well, that's what you want to do with the coaches too. Everybody's all right. Fire this guy. Go get this guy. Go get this guy. This guy doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. I don't think that's a very good take at all.
Yeah, I can't believe we're actually discussing it. But so let's talk about the real issue that I think is going to be very important, Mace, going into the last section of the season. They just picked up a defenseman off of waivers, Andreas England. They have a number of defensemen who weren't on the roster, the opening night roster that started in Milwaukee. Nick Blankenburg, Adam Wilsby, who they just signed to a 2-year inexpensive contract. They've got Spencer Stastny, who has had his issues. He's back in Milwaukee, and they traded for Justin Barron. To me, that group of defensemen, they've got to sort out and figure out, what do they have? Who should they keep? Who's a minor leaguer, as they try to rebuild the defense core? Because as Adam pointed out, the biggest reason that UC Saros has struggled, and the goaltenders as a whole have struggled, is they're giving up way too much quality each night. And then we could have a separate discussion, I think, about why Roman Josi and Brady Shea have not had anywhere close to their average seasons as well. But we know they're going to be part of the mix. So as you try to sort it out, what do you think they could be looking for here in these last 30 games? Or might we see even another trade to try to figure out how to move the pieces around?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the trade possibility. Obviously, I think at this point, Barry's going to try to, get as much as he can for as many assets as he possibly can without completely, disrupting and overhauling everything. But I think he's going to probably listen, take a lot of phone calls, and try to move forward. I know he has plans, but for those defensemen that you're talking about, I know Wilsby just signed a 2-year deal, 2-way to a 1-way, and they're at a really good price. I think these guys, they have to, that's what they're playing for now. Especially a guy like Nick Blankenburg, who I thought came up and is really, really good, and I think surprised a lot of people in his first, 20 or so games. And I think him, along with Wilsby, Justin Barron, have dipped a little bit. I think Barron, offensively, there's a lot to like in his game. He gets up in the rush. He's got a big shot. He seems to be able to, find some good scoring chances in and around the net. But I think defensively, he's a little weak. I don't think he's quite maybe filled out as much as you'd like a guy his height anyway. So I think he kind of, gets when it gets physical in the defensive zone, I think he struggles with that a bit. And that part of it, obviously, being a defenseman, and if you're going to play with Roman Josi at times, you really have to take care of that part of the game. And I don't know if that's, up to NHL standard. But sometimes guys have their offense can, you can deal with that if that's good enough. And I think Wilsby is a guy that, same thing. I thought they're not big guys, Blankenburg or Wilsby, but I think they both really skate well. I think they use their lack of size really effectively in terms of playing bigger than they are. But again, when it gets heavy, you're playing some heavy teams with big forward groups like Vegas or, Winnipeg can be really heavy. I think that, you've seen them at times kind of get a little discombobulated lately because it's a tough league and it's tough to be good for 82 games. And I think we've seen them off to really good starts. And then once reality kind of sets in, then you see a little more of what you have. So I think they're all kind of fighting for the same thing. Is Tanner Molenbeek in the plans? He may be if he comes into camp and shows he can play, but he can also go to Milwaukee next year. So that'll be an option. They don't like to rush guys. And I think signing a guy is, I still think Roman Josi needs a number 2. You look at the best guys in the league, Cale Makar, he's got Devon Taves. Yeah, he's on Team Canada too. They're both playing on Team Canada. So that shows you the level of his partner. And you look at Quinn Hughes and he's got Hronik, who's a very good number 2. He's got some offensive skill, but really defensively, he's a stalwart. And I think that in order for Yossi, to get back to the level that we've seen him, I think he needs a guy like that.
Chris Mason, Predators TV analyst, joining us on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, as he does every Wednesday during hockey season. Chris, great stuff. Enjoy the Four Nations tournament. Go USA.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
You too. Chris Mason joining us on the program. Okay, we're going to indulge Jared for one segment. We're going to do it. We'll do that next.
Why?
Willie Donick, Jared.
Exactly.
We're going to do it. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, the game. D. Mace, Finken, and Donick, 1025, 1063, the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes here.
Go ahead.
So Jared told us before we left the air yesterday that he had a smoker of a Predators take during his show. To recap, Jared said that the Predators should trade UC Saros before his next contract starts because they can, because his current contract does not have any sort of protection. He used the example of Howie Roseman, the Eagles GM, trading Carson Wentz shortly after giving him a big money deal. Jared acknowledged that the Predators would never do it, that there would be a gigantic amount of egg on their face, all of those things. I think we're all in agreement that I don't think I would do that. Willie, I know that you wouldn't do that. Derek, I know that you wouldn't do that. But I do want to address one thing. And I know that some of this may fall on deaf ears because, as we know, as much as we love Jared Stillman, once he is dug in on something, it is near impossible to get him to change his viewpoint. So him and I had a spirited text conversation over the weekend because I saw his tweets that he thinks Justus Annunen is better than UC Saros because Annunen has won more games than UC Saros. He thinks wins are a quarterback stat. He thinks wins are a goaltending stat. I just want to share some perspective. I know Jared is listening because he asked me before the show when we were going to talk about this. I just want to share some perspective, and maybe, just maybe, Jared will consider it for like 5 seconds. So Justus Annunen has won 2 of his past 3 starts. He won in San Jose, he lost in Buffalo, and he beat Buffalo at home right before this 4 Nations break. So he's won 2 of his past 3 games. That's good, right? Here are Justus Annunen's numbers over those 3 starts. And Jared, I want you to tell me if these are good numbers. Annunen over his past 3 starts with 2 wins has a 4.4 goals against average and an 857 save percentage. According to Jared Stillman, if your save percentage is under 900, you stink. 857, pretty significantly under 900. And I don't mean to pick on Justus Annunen here. I'm just trying to make a point. So over his past 3 starts, he's won 2 of them. He has a goals against average of 4.4 and a save percentage of 857. That's bad. There's no way around it. Would you like to know how many goals the Predators have scored over those 3 starts when he's been on the ice? 15. A 5.08 goals per appearance, basically goal support when he's on the ice. 5.08. He's allowed 4.4. The Predators have scored 5.08. So he's been bailed out because the Predators have scored more goals than he's allowed. And he's allowed a lot of goals over these past 3 starts. By comparison, UC Saros over his past 5 starts. He hasn't won any of them, if I'm not mistaken. Guess how many goals, Willie Donick, that the Predators have scored over UC Saros' past 5 starts when he's been on the ice?
I've been saying it's not just the last 5 games. The whole year he has the
I'm
lowest.
Just using this
he has the
sample.
lowest goal support in the league. The lowest goal support in the league. So how many in the last 5?
So he's 0-5 in his past 5 starts.
9
the
or
Predators
10.
have scored 7 goals when he's been on the ice over those past 5 starts.
Yeah. You tell me how you're supposed to win.
Yeah.
And
that's my point.
And then the other thing that Jared knows, because I deep down, the day that I believe that Jared has no brain, that will be a sad day. And I really want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he has a brain, and I think he does. Because I think he likes to push buttons. He likes to see if he can get a reaction out of us. So let's placate him on that. You're getting a reaction. Okay. But Jared, I think, is an individual who has intellect enough to understand that a goalie and a pitcher in baseball have zero to do with how many goals or runs his team scores. They have zero control. Now, maybe you could say, oh, but Willie, the pitcher can hit for himself. Well, that's not the case anymore in baseball, not even in the National League. His beloved Braves play in. The pitcher doesn't even come to bat. So he has zero control. Now you can try to argue. There is no argument. A goalie cannot control how many goals his team scores for him. So to say that Anand is better because he's winning, there's so much more to it than that. And let's also say neither UC Saros or any member of the Predators this year has had a good season. None of them. Not one. So if you're going to single out UC Saros and not mention that, this is the other thing that really surprises me. This is ironic, I think. Remember last year around this time, he made the argument that Roman Josi stinks, that he's playing terrible. And I came back and I listed all of these categories where he was in the top 10 of all of the numbers. But he played a game where Jared, saw that he thought UC Saros made a mistake or two, and he's like, oh, he stinks. He's having a terrible year. He asked Barry Trotz about it. Barry Trotz gave him a nice, lengthy discussion of why that wasn't true. And UC Saros ended up having a great year. I mean, Roman Josi ended up having a great year. Roman Josi's not having a great year this year. If he wanted to make that argument this year about Josi, he would probably have more grounds to make that argument this year than he would for Saros, in my opinion. Roman Josi has not had a good year, and I think he's had some physical ailments that have brought him down. As you heard Chris Mason say, they haven't found the right partner for him. But it's a product of the entire team. Nothing has gone well to this point in the season. So why would you single out UC Saros? It's just so low-hanging fruit and on the surface and not understanding how hockey works, especially if you're going to get on save percentage and wins.
I mean, for one, you really struck a nerve with Willie because I heard the dad voice come out in him. I heard it because I've given that dad voice. So, Jared, you didn't kind of struck a nerve with Willie.
Well, I tried to reason with Jared for a number of years and say, you know what? If you listen to other people and you absorb and you actually, absorb it, be a sponge, and then you want to keep going, that's fine. But he doesn't listen at all. He doesn't care what the other argument is. That's what bums me.
I think
and I agree with him on one point that he made. There's zero chance that this will happen. 0.0. And ask 32 GMs, ask 100 former goalies, experts, see if you can find one that thinks Justus Annunen is better than UC Saros. And Justus Annunen, I think, is a good long-range backup goalie. I think he will be UC Saros' backup for a long time. Nobody would tell you that he's better than UC Saros. Zero.
No, I don't think so. But I think Jared understands there are nuances. There's other things that goes into just determining whether a goalie is good or not, and looking beyond just his wins and losses. I think he understands that. But he made his remarks, and he had to have known this was going to fall flat. But he's going to talk about it later. The part that sort of I was like, well, I don't quite agree with that. Him comparing it to Carson Wentz. This is nothing like a Carson Wentz situation. You got to understand, Carson Wentz threw for 4,000 yards when he got that deal. Threw for 4,000 yards. I think he got it the year before. And then subsequently, he comes back and he gets hurt. And that's when Jalen Hurts comes in. So he already had injury problems. Then he gets hurt and only played 12 games. They felt that, okay, you're injured now. This young kid hurts. He's shown he can play. He just won a Super Bowl. You remember that too, right? The other day too. So they made the right decision. They moved on from Carson Wentz because he was injury prone, and they found a better option that showed that he could win. Okay? Showed that he could run the offense that needed to be ran. And they eventually changed head coaches in the process of all this stuff. So him comparing it to the Wentz sort of deal, I don't think there's no comparison.
No, there's no comparison to him or Wentz. But
apples to cherries.
And again, let me finish. I'm not telling you that UC Saros has had a good year. He hasn't. He's had a below average year for him. So is every single person on the Predators. They've had a bad year. They would be the first to tell you. They're 30th in the league. It speaks for itself.
615-737-1025. Just wanted to get that out of the way. We'll switch gears. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Forget about what you think about him and how he does it. And of course, this is a new era of college basketball.
Mhm.
There is no, it's the Wild West. You can do anything you want. He's built a heck of a team, and he's built a show, right? They put on a show when they play. It was a really interesting game, D-Mace, in that Auburn comes in and they knocked Vanderbilt to the canvas in the first round. It was a first round knockdown, 15-0 to start the game. So at that point,
You're like, whoo.
I started getting a lot of texts.
Hold on.
Guys, I'm going to go do something else. Or Willie, what's going on? Willie, do you want to check into the game? You can't do any worse than these guys. Like, it was like, whoa.
Dust off the old, what was it, number 15?
What's going to 21?
21.
What's going to happen? So I got to give them a lot of credit for digging in, working their way back into the game. And if you flipped it off when it was 15-0, or I think it was 19-4 at one point, they got within 2 at the half, and then they took the lead. I think they were up by as many as 4 in the second half in the first 4 or 5 minutes. They led at the under 16 timeout. And so they did a tremendous job to work themselves back in there. But then you have to give Auburn a lot of credit. Auburn then took it to another level and played a great road game. Like we talked about it yesterday, D-Mace, when we previewed the game, that for Vanderbilt to win, Auburn was going to have to be off a little bit, and Vanderbilt was going to have to be as sharp as they could be. So Vanderbilt was down 15-0 to start the game, took the lead, and they hit 3 3-pointers during that whole span of the game. And they ended up 3 for 16 from 3. So as soon as you saw that stat this morning, you're thinking, oh boy, that's just not going to beat Auburn. 3 for 17 is what they ended up from 3 in the game. So I have to say, I'm tipping my hat to Auburn. That was a number 1 national champion type of performance on the road, where they look like they delivered the knockout punch of TKO in the first round. Then the challenger gets off the turf and comes back at you, hits you with a haymaker, and has the lead. They answered back. That's what a championship level team does, and I think Auburn's got the makings. They've got all of the elements that you need to make a deep run in the tournament.
And we talked about this yesterday, and I said, listen, Auburn can beat you in both ways. If you want to play small ball, they can beat you at small ball because they got shooters. If you want to play big ball, we can beat you with the big guys because we got at least 2 of them that anchors our not just our defense, but one of them anchors our offense. So whichever way you want to play, we can do it. If I told you, if I just said you these numbers, because Auburn won 80-68, and I said 29 rebounds, 37 rebounds to 29, 16 offensive rebounds to 10, 21 defensive rebounds to 19. You would say, man, Auburn killed them on the board. No wonder they won. That was Vanderbilt beating Auburn on the board. But when you beat a team on the boards, especially from an offensive side, you can't then shoot 17% from the 3-point range. They shot pretty good from just inside
from 2.
From 2.
They
shot
were 51% from 2.
Exactly. So
23 out of 45. Not bad.
Yeah. So if you're going to out-rebound the team, you better start hitting some of those 3-pointers. But then contrary to that, you can't, and I'm not saying that they did because they contested a lot of these 3-pointers, but they shot 37.5% from the 3-point line. At one point, Auburn was shooting 70% from the field. 70. I don't care who you are. If that was Duke playing Auburn, or if that was, name another team, Michigan State playing Auburn, or Tennessee or Kentucky, they would not win, meaning the other team. Because why? When you're shooting 70% from the field, you better be, on the other hand, shooting close to it as well and making some of those threes. But Vandy wasn't do that. I do credit Vandy for overcoming the sort of the onslaught at the beginning. putting themselves in a position at half, only being down 2, I think. They were down 2.
Down 2 at half,
Yeah.
and led 40 their best lead, I'm looking at it here now, 45-42 with 16 and change left in the game.
And so you commit, you know they got fight in them. But ultimately, what wins games is you got the Jimmies and they don't have the Joes.
Not quite enough.
Exactly. They don't have enough Joes to counter Auburn's Jimmies. And if you don't, then you got to do some of those other things well. You got to shoot from the 3-point well. You got to, tip in those opportunities that you have on the offensive end when you get an offensive rebound. You got to do those smaller things. You can't get in foul trouble in the second half. And I understand, because this is what I asked Byington when he came on. How do you get your team to adjust when on one hand they're allowing it to be physical, as they did the first half, but then the second half, it became a different game? And I'm not faulting the refs, but I'm just saying, when you're a team like Vandy and you're undersized, you got to overcome that with physicality. And that physicality sort of it bit him in the back end in the second half. And it might, depending on how they officiate Vandy moving forward, this may end up being an issue.
I thought it was so impressive. You're right. I think night in and night out, what Vanderbilt likes to do, because they don't have real shot blockers, especially when they're playing against a team with length like Auburn does. So what they do is they're going to pressure the ball. They're going to try to create steals out on the perimeter. They'll also try to strip the ball rather than block the shot. They're going to try to dig and strip. And you saw that a bunch. And sometimes I think the attitude is they're not going to call everything. If they do call everything, they're in trouble. In the first half, Auburn did not shoot a free throw. So they were getting away with it a little more. In the second half, you kind of could see, and I'm sure Bruce Pearl was working them, hey, we didn't shoot a free throw, guys. And sure enough, 5 minutes into the second half, they've got like 5 or 6 fouls. But Auburn did a good job of also attacking, getting the ball in. They found the matchups. And the guy last night that I thought won the game for them was Chaney Johnson. And this is, again, why you look at Auburn's team and you say, this is a tough team to guard. This is a tough team to beat, because one night it's Broome. One night it's Denver Jones. One night it's Chad Baker-Mazar. They have a lot of different guys that can make plays. And they've got 5 of them on the floor at one time. You have to account for everything. But Chaney Johnson went 8 for 8 from 3. He's not a great 3-point shooter. He's under 30%, but he even chipped in and went 1 for 2 from 3. So it was his night. He goes 9 for 10, scores 20 points. That's the kind of thing. If it happens, it's hard to beat number 1.
Yeah, you're right.
But the uniqueness of the shots, I didn't think Vanderbilt did a bad job on him defensively. There were plays where he sees that he's got a little bit of a size advantage. He backs his guy down. He hit a lot of shots that in today's world of basketball, analytics would tell you that's what you have to give up. Rather than give up open threes or dunks, Vanderbilt elected not to double and try to see if Johnson could be the star. And he didn't miss a single shot. These were jump hooks 6 or 7 feet out. These weren't like tap-ins or layups or dunks. I just have to tip my hat and just say that guy played a heck of a game. And I think a lot of people in the stands were probably, and I was in the stands, people were probably saying, how about a double team? Well, if you double, then you're leaving 40% 3-point shooters open all around, and they were hitting.
Yeah, it's just hard to defend because they have, what not many teams have. One, they have a lot of length. And they got depth in their roster. But they got shooters. They got guys that are just going to knock down. But if they're not knocking them down, they can dump it in a Broome and he can dominate. You're talking about a guy that is a
very
Naismith,
hard to guard. Yeah.
The Naismith, he's going to be a Naismith finalist, and whether he gets it or not, it's a different story. But not only do we have outside shooters with Denver Jones and some of these other guys, we got Broome that can just he dominated the second half. He really did. He got to a point in the second half
problem
where he did, like you said, Willie, he started banging, and he made it very difficult for Carey and McLaughlin to consistently guard him. And if they did, they got in foul trouble sometimes, or he just got him so far in the low post that it was just it was a mismatch.
You look at Broom's numbers at the end of the game. He had 6 for 13 from 2, 0 for 3 from 3, 5 for 8 from the free throw line, 17 points. I think if I'm trying to beat number one and knowing what Broom can do, that's really not that bad. That's not that bad. Now, most of his production came in the second half when they really started making a conscious effort. Let's get into the lane. Let's use our size advantage. They recognize that, and that's where he was more effective. There were a couple times I think he rebounded his own miss, and so he got a couple extra rebounds and stuck them back in, or somebody else on his team did. But to me, the guy that made the difference was Johnson, and the perimeter shooters did their job on the road. They knocked down the open three. Denver Jones went 5 for 7 from 3. To beat number one, to beat this Auburn team, and I've watched a few teams try to do it. You have to be razor sharp, and you have to hope that they're a little bit off. I think that's what it's going to take in the NCAA tournament to beat Auburn. They're going to be tough. Their efficiency offensively is off the charts. Number one in the NCAA. Number one offensive efficiency.
Adam and I discussed this briefly during the first segment, and I was looking at Vandy's schedule from here on out, because listen, it's nothing but top.
It's
25.
murderer's row.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I wouldn't wish this on Michigan. No, I'm lying. I would wish that on Michigan, but they got number 5 Tennessee next,
on the
road at number 15 Kentucky. Back here, number 19 Ole Miss, at number 8 Texas A&M. Back here, number 21 Missouri. Arkansas is playing pretty well.
Yes, they are.
Pretty good.
At Georgia.
And then at Georgia. And I'm not trying to put, and they talked a lot about
Joe
Lunardi's bracketology about Vandy right now being in. I think he had it as a number 11 seed right now. Well, you didn't see it, you were there, but on television they had him as a number 11 seed right as of now. Now that was as the game was going. It may have dropped a little bit, but you look at this schedule, and I said you get 2 more wins, and that's minus the SEC tournament, because that's going to be another animal in itself.
Ooh, yeah.
But you get 2 more wins. Not only do I believe that you should be in, but I think Byington should win at least SEC Coach of the Year. And it puts him in the running to win the National Coach of the Year. But the thing is, you got to do it. Because these teams, man, but they can't avoid it because the SEC is so strong right now.
They will be an underdog in all but maybe one of the remaining regular season conference games. So when you see Lunardi, this is the trap that you cannot fall into, is to sit there and go, well, Vanderbilt's in. They're going to be in. That means absolutely nothing. That in a quarter won't even get you a phone call, because I don't know.
Now, if they lose all these games, I don't think they're in.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, until you win the games, you're not in. So when you're saying, well, Lunardi's got him in right now, that doesn't mean anything. That's why I don't pay attention to it really, other than to say, okay, are they putting together a resume that could have them in? Yes. But you could go down that murderer's row game by game, and you can see a 5-game losing streak if they're not playing well.
Exactly.
They're going to have to play good games just to get one. I think the next 4, you're playing all teams that are in the KenPom in the top 20. The easiest team that you play is Ole Miss at home, and Ole Miss is very, very good. Ole Miss was a little bit like Vanderbilt. I saw them a little over a week ago take Auburn into the deep water. They were in the game in the second half, and Auburn flexed. It was just a little too good. But Ole Miss is a good team. So that's a huge game to circle, trying to take advantage on your home court and get another high-level win.
How many games, out of the 7 games, how many of them do you think they need to win to be able to say, hey, we can make it to the tournament?
That's a great question. D-Mace, you say 2. I've heard some people say 2. That would make them 7-11 in the league.
It doesn't
like to
sound
think,
good.
I would like to think
but-
that's true.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, I want if I'm Vanderbilt, I'm really pushing to try to. I got to get 8. Get 8, and I feel like I didn't have to do anything in the SEC tournament. To me, if you won 7, which would only be 2 more wins from now, and then lost in the first round of the SEC tournament, I don't know who they're going to play, but it's going to be somebody good, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to get a bye, so they're going to play another team kind of like them that's good. You lose that game, I think you're sweating, because here's what they don't have on the resume. In the pre-conference, they have some decent wins, and they won impressively. In most cases, they thrashed the teams they were supposed to thrash. And in the net, it does matter. You notice none of the scrubs came in for either team, because coaches know that you can't just let a team run away in the final 5 minutes, even if the game's over, which, by the 5-minute mark, Auburn had a stranglehold on the game. They weren't going to lose the game. But Bruce Pearl didn't put his scrubs in there, and neither did Mark Byington, because margin of victory does come into play in the net. And I don't like that, really. I think you should use the human eye test, but it does. So the biggest dip that Vanderbilt lost was when they lost by 30 at Oklahoma. That bad second half they played cost them some slots in the net. So they don't have a great road win, and they don't have a great signature non-conference win. So they're leaning heavily on the Tennessee and Kentucky wins, which are both at home. So that's why I think 3 is the number. Remember that song, 3 is a magic number. I don't know why I just thought of that, but I want 3 more wins.
But when I say
If you
2,
can get to,
when I say
2 will put you on the bubble. For
I'm
sure.
talking about 2 of the remaining 5. You get 2 of the remaining 5. I'm not talking about Arkansas and Georgia.
Oh,
I'm saying
okay,
2 of the 5 remaining top 25 teams they have. I know Arkansas is sort of on that cusp.
So is Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah, Georgia. But if you can get 2 wins out of the right now ranked teams.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not
I
even
like how you're
counting
thinking. Yeah.
Georgia and Arkansas.
That would keep you on the pace.
Exactly.
I think. No question about it. And that's not a gimmick.
Yeah, it's not a
I mean,
gimmick.
Missouri's 0-16 in the league last year. 0-16. They're really good. They are really good. So was Ole Miss. So the next 5 games are all lights out tough. And look, Arkansas and Georgia, I'm putting them all in there, because Arkansas and Georgia, those are really good teams too.
Yeah.
They're right similar with Vanderbilt's rating, right? They're all in the mix.
The league is just good this year, really good. And
This
unfortunately,
is like the
for
worst
Vanderbilt,
time to be like
Yeah.
like Vanderbilt coming up on the rise, because everyone else is so good. Everyone else is in the top
Right.
25 right now.
So this is something to watch. Vanderbilt's challenge from here. You think Tennessee and Kentucky fans will be frothing when Vanderbilt comes in, knowing that Vanderbilt beat both of them? Like,
oh yeah,
that's not
Woo!
going to be a fun atmosphere in
Oh
either
no,
place.
not at all. Not
So
at all.
and Kentucky just beat Tennessee for a second time last night. So Kentucky is hard to figure out. They've had some struggles, but they've had some great wins,
But
including
that's
2 over
Kentucky.
Tennessee.
That is Kentucky, no matter who's coaching them.
Interesting. All right, we'll take a break here. We'll come back. We'll keep moving forward with the show. 615-737-1025 is our number, our phone and text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. DVD continues. All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. Give them a call, 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. You hear me talking about these guys all the time. If you listen to our station, you know I believe in them and their process of converting home equity into cold hard cash so you can use that money. Most people who are homeowners have thousands of dollars of equity built up. And if you have a need for that money, it's a tool that you can use. And in so many cases, they're going to get you a better interest rate. So it's a trade-off. You borrow from your home's equity, you pay off a bill that has, say, a bigger interest rate, like a credit card bill or a car loan that has a huge interest rate, you can get that knocked down, boom, it's gone. All you got to do is call Loan Pronto, because not only can they convert that home equity into cash, they can do it quickly. They can do it with no paperwork, no cumbersome process, no junk fees, often no appraisal. So they've got tools to smooth over the process and make it happen quick. So call Loan Pronto right now, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Get the money you need, loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
There's a consensus, it seems, about these two quarterbacks. But do you see, as is usually the case, somebody falling in love with Cam Ward and making an offer that is attractive enough for the Titans to deal out?
I tell you, it's certainly possible because, for a few reasons. Number one, I think that you said, I think that it's certainly possible that somebody, not just Cam, it might be Shedeur too. I know there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more questions obviously about, long-term with Shedeur, but also, all the other stuff around him. I think the Cam Ward story, though, is pretty easy to fall in love with as a guy who's just done nothing but improve, has gotten better and better everywhere he's been. So that would not shock me. And I think that the really interesting thing here for Tennessee there is what, nobody really knows what Cleveland, what are they doing? Like, I don't know. Did they want are they going to take a quarterback here? They want somebody else. I think that that's something too that maybe teams look at and say, we don't know what they want to do. We want to jump them. If that's a thing that rises up, or, if the Raiders say love one of these quarterbacks more than the other, would they be interested in getting over the Giants even? So I think that, it's very possible because there's two guys up here that are first-round quarterbacks that are good enough to start next season with some help and, guide you along, a lot like what Bo Nix did. I think at least Shedeur can do that. Cam Ward, I think long-term is the better prospect, but they both need help. And I think that's, for Tennessee right now, the best hope would be maybe if somebody falls in love, yes, and then wants to jump up there, one of those absolutely desperate teams like, Vegas or the Giants.
That was the Athletic's Nick Baumgartner, NFL draft analyst, on with Joe Rexrode and Paul Kaharski. Robbie Stanley on vacation this week. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. So speaking of Paul Kaharski, he had a story on his website a couple of days ago, rating the most quarterback desperate teams to trade with the Titans, because that's the situation the Titans might find themselves. If they do not love Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, there are other teams nearby that need a quarterback. The Browns at 2 need a quarterback. The Giants at 3 need a quarterback. The Raiders at 6 need a quarterback. Now the Jets need a quarterback. We talked a lot about Aaron Rodgers yesterday. He's out in New York. I'm not sure if that's been made official yet, but it's expected to happen. The Jets need a quarterback. So if one of those other franchises loves Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders more than the Titans do, the Titans have an opportunity to trade back and accumulate draft picks. We've talked about that quite a bit. So what I thought was interesting about this story, guys, was Paul looked at each of those teams, looked at the quarterbacks under contract, the most recent quarterbacks drafted, the clock, so to speak, on each team's GM, and quarterback starved since. And I thought this was interesting. So, for example, the Cleveland Browns have been quarterback starved since 2020, when they had Baker Mayfield, who went 11-5, averaged 222.7 yards per game, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 95.9 passer rating. Talk about revisionist history. Imagine if the Browns wouldn't have given up on Baker Mayfield, considering what Baker Mayfield has done with the Buccaneers and everything that's gone on with Deshaun Watson. Imagine if the Browns had a do-over on that. The most quarterback-starved team, according to Paul Kaharski, is the New York Jets, who he believes have been quarterback-starved since 2015 with Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's how far back you have to go since they've had.
And I would say Ryan Fitzpatrick is like a side salad. Not really. I don't know if that, maybe it doesn't have you start. Maybe you're still kind of starved, but is that really?
I guess 31 touchdowns, 15 interceptions.
Yep. He went 10-6, averaged 244.1 yards per game, 31 touchdowns, 15 interceptions.
Okay, so maybe a grilled chicken salad.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Not from the fancy
maybe it's just
place.
enough to have a meal.
Right.
So you're not starved. But anyway.
Right. It satiates you.
It's not exactly a nice
grapes.
T-bone steak from, certified Alberta beef or something,
You feel a little
Kansas
healthy,
City
but
steaks.
it's not too good.
It's a pot pie. Okay. It's
Right.
a pot pie.
I think of Ryan Fitzpatrick. You eat that healthy.
Where's Frazier when we need him? Nick Frazier, he'd have the right meal.
Exactly.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is, you have the salad, you throw some protein on it because you're like, I'll make a meal out of it. And then you eat it and you're like, I'm not full. Give me some French fries.
Right.
Like
Got a side order of fries.
Right. That's exactly what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. So I'm curious about, this is a question that we've touched on a little bit, but if the Titans trade back, how far are they willing to trade back? Well, you've mentioned the example of what they did in 2016 with the Rams. They traded back to 15?
Right.
And then moved
back up
to get Jack Conklin.
To 8.
So which of these teams, Browns, Giants, Raiders, Jets, Browns at 2, Giants at 3, Raiders at 6, Jets at 7, which of those teams do you think will ultimately be the neediest at quarterback. Which team do you think the Titans could potentially exploit because of their relative quarterback starvation?
I'm not sure it matters which one, as long as there's maybe a couple that are interested. And let me add a layer to it to match up with something you guys discussed in the first segment of the show with Field Yates' take on Travis Hunter. Derek, you made a great point. To me, the team that is going to covet Travis Hunter is going to say, this is the special player that's worth taking first overall because he can help us in more than one way. If you're just drafting him as a receiver or as a defensive back, to me, that's not worth reaching for and taking him number one. So I'm hoping that maybe there's a team or two or three in that group you just mentioned, Adam, and then mention it, and then maybe another team that doesn't necessarily need a quarterback, but they see Travis Hunter as that guy who truly is special in that he is going to move the needle in two areas. You're getting two players for the price of one. They rarely come along. And to be honest, it's a high risk because he could get hurt. But look what Shohei Ohtani does, right? What he did with baseball. He did something that nobody has done. And that's a whole nother level. I don't think Travis Hunter has to do that, dominate as a pitcher and dominate as a hitter like Ohtani has done, which is still off the charts, mind-blowing. But if you can be sort of two for the price of one, that might be worth giving up assets for the number one overall pick. So that, to me, that fuels my theory that you're going to get some nibbles. You're going to get some bites for somebody that A, wants one of these quarterbacks, or B, thinks that Travis Hunter is that special two-way player that is, quote, generational.
I think
we can't use that term. Even if you say, quote, generational.
But, that was in a hypothetical. They think he's generational. I'm not saying he's generational.
Saying what they're saying.
That's what you want, right?
I guess we'll amend it that we can't say generational like we're talking about.
Okay, and look at the organizations we're talking about here, right? The Raiders, the Browns, the Jets. Let's just look at those three. Those three teams haven't made great decisions. And you could say, well, the Titans have made great decisions, but you have to hope that one of these three teams gets a little desperate. The concept that Paul's throwing out there, they're starved, right? They're starved for something. They got to shake it up. So maybe you're willing to gamble and give up assets. To me, that's the sound mind thinking move that you can make that I will continue to subscribe to. Create interest in that first pick. Get people going. Hype up Shedeur Sanders. Hype up Travis Hunter. Hype up Cam Ward. And then take everything you can get for that first pick. Move down. Still get somebody who you think is really good with your first round pick.
Yeah, it's going to be. Listen, I said this yesterday that right now it's just Cam and Shedeur, but best believe as we start getting closer to the NFL draft, there will be another quarterback inserted in there. Hell, they're trying to insert Jackson Dart in there already.
Do you think Hunter will be somebody will say that's a first overall pick that I'm willing to trade up for? You think he could get in that category? Or are you skeptical?
I think he can for this reason and this reason only. I go against what Phil Yates said because Phil Yates said, I will draft Hunter number one as a cornerback.
Right. So me, I agree with you. Exactly. That's not it. Somebody's got to be enticed with the idea that he's going to be both.
Exactly. So when you drafting him number one, and he's neither the top prospect at either position, but he is the top prospect in regards to his athletic ability to play the game, then you're drafting him number one as a athlete. You're saying we're going to play him on offense. We're going to play him on defense. He's going to be that guy for us. If you don't think that's the case, I don't think anyone's drafting him number one. You're not drafting him number one to be unless he shows at the combine or he runs a 4.2. His measurables are just off the charts, which they may end up being. But he still doesn't come in. I don't think it will translate in regards to him playing both levels, him playing both sides on that high level.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, it is very
but
hard.
But nobody
to do.
thought that Shohei Ohtani
could do it
when he came in there
but it's
and
different.
do what he's done. But it is different in football, right? Because the physical beating that you're taking. Yeah.
Yeah, Shohei is not taking a physical beating.
Right.
Other than,
and there have been several seasons where his arm hasn't held up and he can't pitch. But the good thing is he can still be a dominant hitter. That's what you can fall back on.
So if you're drafting him, I'm not saying he's going to be out of the picture in regards to a team wanting to move up and draft him first or overall. But I think in regards to this draft, Cleveland needs a quarterback. The Giants need one. In the Raiders, in the Jets.
Listen to the quarterbacks that are under contract for all of the teams. And we'll throw the Titans in here as well. Of course, the Titans still have Will Levis under contract. The Browns have Deshaun Watson under contract and Dorian Thompson-Robinson under contract. The Giants have 0 quarterbacks under contract right now. The Raiders have Aiden O'Connell and Carter Bradley, and the Jets have Aaron Rodgers for now, but they have Tyrod Taylor, Jordan Travis, and Adrian Martinez. Those last few names may be made up after Tyrod Taylor. But relative to the Titans situation, it's not so bad, I guess. I mean, Will Levis wasn't great, but look at these other situations. I just wanted to point about how, the Titans are not alone with how terrible their quarterback situation.
No, they're not. Now, how far down can they move? Listen, I'm not sure. Once we hit free agency, I think a lot of needs will be changed and how teams want to position themselves. So, yes, I can say right now they can't move no further than if they're looking for a quarterback, they can't move no further than really 3rd or 4th if they're looking for a quarterback. But if they're not, then hey, I will be able to better understand, I think, where this team is headed after free agency.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on this and the other quarterback-starved teams and the NFL. Boy, I'm hungry. I really want a grilled chicken salad after that Ryan Fitzpatrick conversation. Yeah. Maybe I can scarf one down during the break. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
Hey, this is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a goal or some type of resolution at the beginning of the year to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and they will offer you a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize their program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Talking the quarterback situation because we've got 2 months until the NFL draft. So there's going to be a lot of talk about the quarterback situation, but we're going to talk about some other positions in the next hour. But
I have that number for you too.
We'll hold on to that.
Okay.
Speaking of PFF, which is what Derek is referring to, they got me with this headline, guys. NFL trades that could shake up the 2025 offseason. I'm a sucker for these types of headlines. They know exactly what they're doing. I've written plenty of these headlines. I know how to get people to click, or at least I think I do. So I saw this and I said, okay, let's look at some of these trades. Myles Garrett to the Detroit Lions is one. That's interesting. Cooper Kupp from the Rams to the Broncos. Okay, I could see it. Deebo Samuel from the 49ers to the Commanders. All right, sure. Kirk Cousins from the Atlanta Falcons to the Tennessee Titans.
Ooh.
For what?
Let's just read what PFF has to say. This article was written by Mason Cameron. Mason Cameron, I'm not familiar with your work, but we will read this anyway. According to Mason Cameron, after Cousins was overtaken by Michael Penix Jr. as the Falcons' starting signal caller, the possibilities of his next home began to spin up like a hurricane. However, much still stands in the way of this parting. Cousins still holds significant contract costs and a no-trade clause to boot. This would likely limit the number of teams that could feasibly take on his contract, still due $155 million over the next 3 seasons, and the possibility he could reject any deal that may materialize.
What is he writing this for?
There is the possibility that Atlanta could agree to eat a portion of his contract to facilitate a deal, but much remains to be seen regarding that possibility. Long story short, there are many hurdles standing in the way of a trade, but should he be moved, there will be no shortage of suitors. One team to keep an eye on would be the Tennessee Titans.
Why? Because they're stupid enough to pay that contract?
Exactly.
Let's fast forward through this a little bit. Head coach Brian Callahan benched Will Levis this past season after various bouts with questionable decision-making and could very well look at a veteran signal caller to take up the mantle. That would provide this team with flexibility come draft day while also finding their starter under center. While being traded to the team with the worst record in the NFL last season may seem like a clear-cut opportunity for Cousins to exercise his no-trade clause, the AFC South continues to profile as a fairly winnable division, which may appeal to Cousins, who will be 37 years old come August. We had this conversation. Willie, you weren't here. We were talking, Derek and I were talking about best and worst case scenarios for quarterbacks next season for the Titans.
And we also had the day where I was here. I discussed Cousins in the group of 6 that you put out there. But anything that has Kirk Cousins on the radar for the Titans, the word is cut. He needs to be cut to have an interest. I'm not trading for that contract. I'm not trading assets to get him at this stage of his career. So what I would like to hear, if somebody writes something like that, get real. Nobody's going to trade for that contract. Not even the Titans. Now, in a vacuum, could Kirk Cousins be a placeholder for a year? He could, I think, but it's got to work financially, and they have no leverage at all for the Falcons. They're going to cut him if nobody trades for him. So you got to make it worth somebody's while if you're actually entertaining, if you're going to make a call to Mike Borgonzi, for him to take the phone call, you have to say, Mike, before you hang up, Mike, before you hang up, hear me out.
You got to preface it.
Here's what I got to offer you. Here's how we're going to rework the money. Here's how we're going to do this or that to make this attractive to you. It's not, hey, do you want me to dump this really bad contract I signed Cousins to? Would you like that contract and you'll trade me a draft pick? No, that ain't going to work.
I still hang up on you. Yeah, just like that. I would still hang up on you.
I thought for a second I tripped the phone line, so I'm glad that wasn't me.
First, and then we cannot talk. You cut him and we cannot talk. We're not talking right now.
Not at all interested in Kirk Cousins.
This is just and Kurt's.
Look, it's clickbait, and it got me. It got me. I clicked. I took the bait. I clicked. It's clickbait. But
don't you have a guy in your fantasy league that does that?
Yeah.
Hey, do you want my worst player for your best player?
My injured player.
My injured player. Yeah. Here's my
Yeah.
injured player. He's not going to play for a month.
You
But
know what?
will you trade me your best player?
Admittedly,
And I take your healthy player.
admittedly, sometimes that's me.
It's worth a try. I
A
guess.
couple of years ago, I needed a second quarterback because I was in the 2-quarterback league, and I offered a person in my league, Miles Sanders, who was having a terrible first season at running back for the Panthers, for Matthew Stafford, and the guy took it. So
There's no harm in
Wow.
Sucker.
Wow.
but
that's
that
a
I
big,
am that guy in fantasy
fat
football.
sucker right there. But there,
But
there-
even then, even if he were cut, he can't move. He can't move.
Yeah,
He's coming off an Achilles. He's already talking about his arm and his shoulder being a problem with, why he got benched. With this offensive line, he's a sitting duck back there. I don't like it.
He's
at all.
always been a sitting duck.
But-
really,
Yeah.
to be fair,
yeah.
he's never won because he
But
can
if he
move.
was sitting in a chair, if he was sitting in
He's
a
a
chair,
strap down
right,
duck
no,
now.
like if he was sitting
He
in a
ain't going
chair
nowhere.
before, he's in a beanbag chair now. You know how hard it is to get out of a beanbag
big
chair?
It is
lazy
hard to
boy.
get out of a
especially
beanbag
as an
chair.
adult. So
Yes.
if he was a sitting duck in just an easy boy or a lazy boy, I should say. Now he's a sitting duck in a beanbag chair at age 37.
He's a sitting duck in one of those flip gymnasium things where all of the cushions are in the thing and you jump in there as an adult and you can't get out. That's Kirk Cousins right now. He ain't getting out. And even if, like Willie said, even if they cut him, and you said it, Adam, too, why even bring him?
It would have to be for a really small price and not where you're taking a flyer.
It would be like
And-
Justin
and even
Fields.
like-
It would
I
be like
understand
$1
there'll still
million
be
a
questions.
year.
But there are questions about all these guys,
Yeah,
right?
but it would be $1 million a year because I think Minnesota is on the hook for some of this money regardless if they cut him or not. They
Oh,
still got
yeah.
to pay him
the
something.
Falcons are
Yeah.
on huge. Yeah,
So
they owe him a ton of money.
You want to come here? Here's $1 million.
Right. It's comical that you would say
Yeah.
somebody would trade for him.
No,
Now watch somebody
will
if they do
trade
that.
We have
I'd be
breaking news.
stunned.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
We don't have breaking
He's
news.
stunned. Nobody's going to do
If
it.
you trade for Kirk Cousins, as much as I love Kirk Cousins, he's not.
But
the
he
guy.
did have some very good games last year early in the season
And it completely fell off the cliff.
when his arm got hurt.
Yeah.
So he's trying to sell. My arm will be better next year, and I can still be effective.
I would
think-
rather it be the
I think that
Achilles than the arm.
I see what you're saying. Like you're skeptical when a
Mhm.
guy gets this age that he's telling the truth, but if you're going to gamble on that,
Mhm.
I'm not going to gamble a lot of money. I'm certainly not going to give up assets and pay him a lot of money or take on anything close to his contract. He's getting paid like a pretty good starter.
The minute he said I was having my shoulder or elbow, whichever one he said, it was his arm. Let's just put it that way. When he brought his arm into the equation, I'm out. I am out. That's like a 40-year-old pitcher, a 41-year-old pitcher saying, yeah, my arm started to hurt. It's like, well, I don't want you. No.
Well, I
don't
can
wanna
see
touch you.
him having to do like a Colin Kaepernick showcase, right? He might have to, if he gets cut,
Mhm.
he might have to go out and say, let me show you my arm is better.
Yeah.
Right. And because that even though he can't move, he knows how to read defenses. He could go out there at age 50 and probably know how a defense is
But
going
if
to
his
try to go
arm's
about
not
things.
strong enough to
Right.
get it,
That's what you have
yeah.
to show me in that showcase is, okay, I'll gamble.
Mhm.
I'll gamble that your arm can squeak by for one more year
Mhm.
at age 37. Hey, Tom Brady didn't have the greatest arm when he was 42 or 43. But how did he beat you? With cerebral. His arm was just good enough. And
Yeah.
Cousins isn't that level. But could Cousins get you by for a year while you try to figure out what the heck you're doing?
You better
at
have
quarterback?
you better have Denver's defense because Peyton
Well-
Manning went through the same thing.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning really couldn't throw that
Exactly.
last year.
But you had a
They
defense,
had a
a
great
hell of a running
defense.
game.
Yeah.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on the Titans and their quarterback search. But let's take a break from the quarterback because there are other holes to fill on this roster. And our very own Teron Davenport had a story on ESPN.com discussing just that. And we will do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Bingham, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Talking Titans needs. It's a long list. The Titans need a lot of things, not just quarterbacks. We're going to talk a lot about quarterbacks. We're going to continue to talk a lot about quarterbacks. And even after they pick a quarterback, we'll still be talking about quarterbacks. But there are other things that the Titans need other than quarterback. Teron Davenport, our very own friend. Well, he's all of our friends. He's everybody's friend. That's a weird thing to say, our very own friend. He's our friend. He had a story on ESPN.com. The top 6 roster needs for the Tennessee Titans. Of course, quarterback is on the list. But there are a couple of other positions on here that I want to discuss. One, let's start here. Edge rusher. Teron writes, quote, Tennessee failed to have a defender register double-digit sacks in a season for the first time since 2022, with Harold Landry's 9 sacks leading the way. Defensive coordinator Denard Wilson needs an impact player coming off the edge who can make plays that tilt games. Adding a disruptive outside force to pair with defensive tackles Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat collapsing the pocket from the inside would give the Titans a coordinated pass rush that could wreak havoc on opposing offenses. There is a edge rusher available at the top of the draft. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, Willie. You weren't here yet. Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter is one way the Titans could go to plug this hole. There is another player whose name I've seen linked quite a bit to the Titans in free agency. Josh Sweat, who had an incredible Super Bowl performance, had 6 pressures and 2.5 sacks against the Chiefs. He is a not a restricted free agent, a pending free agent. And Derek, you have the contract projections for Josh Sweat according to Pro Football Focus.
Well, this one I was looking for on Pro Football Focus. I couldn't find the exact number. I got mine off of Spot Track.
Okay.
Which has a market value right now. What his market value would be headed into free agency. 3 years, 56 million, a little bit over, 56.4 really market value. So that averages out to be 18.8 mil per year. Again, I'm not paying him 18.8 million a year.
And that number, I imagine, does not include the Super Bowl performance of a lifetime contract bump that he will inevitably get from another team.
He will get that bump. We saw the bump years ago, and we talked about this, Willie. Larry Brown, 12th round pick out of Dallas. He has a great, Super Bowl game, MVP of the Super Bowl. So that leads him into a huge contract. And that season he got benched they were the Oakland Raiders. In that year, I believe he got benched. After signing that lucrative contract, he then gets benched, and then they cut him the next following year, I believe, after that. So people don't get enamored. And there's been other guys. I think we talked about the guy from Tampa Bay, Jackson. Another guy that had a really good Super Bowl and parlayed it to a contract, and it didn't work out. Don't get enamored by what he did in the biggest game in the biggest stage on television. He played great, but what he's a good player. He's a $10 million, $11 million guy, not an 18, and it probably will be closer to more so like 20. He's not that guy. He's a 8, maybe 9 sack guy. That's what you're getting. Now, if you want to pay a 9 sack guy $20 million, go right ahead, Titans. You're going to end up, I believe, in the same boat as far as productivity as the other backer from Pittsburgh. Not
Bud Dupree?
Yeah, Bud Dupree. You're going to end up getting sort of the same production. Because when Bud was on the field, he was okay, but he was not on the field as much. And I'm not saying that Sweat has injury issues, but do not let the Super Bowl blind you on how good or not, or how good he is. Because I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's the Super Bowl caliber player from here on out. He's not going to give you that from here on out. Philadelphia had one of the best defensive lines in the National Football League. Maybe he benefited off that. But he's a good player. I'm not paying him close to $18 million. I'm not paying him $20 million. But he may get that from somebody. But if he wants to come here, no, we're paying you about 11.
He restructured his contract, by the way, last season. Josh Sweat agreed to a restructured contract to remain in Philadelphia despite interest elsewhere for what likely would have been a pay increase. So he took a pay cut to stay with the Eagles, had the game of his life in the Super Bowl. So I have to imagine he's eager to hit the open market.
Oh, I'm sure he is. I would be as well.
And what usually happens with free agents? Do you usually get a bargain on them?
No.
Probably not. Now, who do you get a bargain on? You get a bargain on guys like Andre Dillard.
Zach Bond is a perfect example. Zach Bond was a depth player, a depth linebacker for the New Orleans Saints. He signs a 1-year, $3.5 million contract with the Eagles in free agency, barely moved the needle. He became an incredible story.
Right.
Finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. So,
but those are guys you have to have
a keen,
right. You have to have a keen eye for that particular player and his skill set and say that he's being used differently than he would be used for us, and he'll be more effective. But for somebody like Sweat, who plays that position, which is a tough position to find.
And by the way, it's a premium position. To Devondre.
Right.
I've seen it.
And his body type is different.
Yes.
He did have 11 sacks and 22. Yes. So let's say that.
No relation
so what's
to Devondre.
You're not going to get Sweat for a bargain. You're going to have to overpay to get Sweat. That's what I'm getting at. So if you want to do that, you can. But we see what happens a lot of times when you pay more than a guy is probably worth. You get what you get. Now, if you're okay with that, and you're like, this is still better than the alternative, then okay. But you have to know going in. Can we go down the list? What was the one guy? Vic Beasley, Bud Dupree, Jadeveon Clowney. Yeah. You could go down the road of guys that they paid a really good price for, who were flawed players, but you were hoping maybe they'll bounce back, or maybe in our system they'll do well. It's a gamble that they have gotten burned on before. I'm not saying it couldn't work. You've got to have edge rushers, right? They're desperate for edge rushers, but you're not going to get a bargain on this guy.
Listen, okay, here's his playoff run. Because who did they play first? The Rams? Yeah, the Rams.
The Eagles started with the Packers.
Oh, yeah, the Packers.
Which is funny because they were replaying that game on the television yesterday, and I said to the both of you, I have no recollection of this game whatsoever.
Me either.
The Eagles beat the Packers, then the Rams, then the Commanders, then the Chiefs.
So here's his numbers, because again, don't get blinded by one game. Against Green Bay, he had one tackle and one solo tackle. Against the Rams, he had one solo tackle. Against Washington, he had 2 tackles, 1 solo and 1 assisted. So before the Super Bowl, and I understand he had a terrific Super Bowl. I'm not taking that away from him. If you would have named him MVP, I wouldn't have argued. I really wouldn't have. But he, leading up to the Super Bowl, he was just a guy. He was a Jag, just another guy. He played his role, and it was a part of what some of the other guys did too. But on the biggest stage, which, hey, listen, if you're going to perform, then what better place to do it on the biggest stage? He had 6 tackles, 2 solos, 4 assists, and 2.5 sacks. Not mentioning some pressures he may have had. Okay, he had the best game probably of his life at the biggest, on the biggest stage at the biggest moment. So kudos to that. But I am not paying him $20-something million for that, because I'm looking at the whole body of the work. And it seems like he would be more so inclined to be a guy that's going to stay stagnant or fall off a little bit, rather than a guy that I think is going to now get 13, 14, possibly even 15 sacks. Because if I'm paying him that much, that's what you need to be getting.
Here are some of the notable edge rushers, according to SpotTrack, who are free agents in a month? Free agency starts in about a month from now. Top of the list is Khalil Mack. Hassan Reddick, who did Hassan Reddick play at all this season?
Yeah, no. Yeah, he did. I think he played toward the end.
He
He did
did?
play. Yeah, Hassan Reddick, he did play
no
toward the end.
recollection of that.
I think he did.
I don't remember seeing any highlights of it. Who did he play for? Did he
It was-
sign with the Jets?
it was the
Ultimately
Jets.
go to the Jets. I have
It
no
was
either
I
way.
think he played, or was that last?
Oh, let's
No,
see.
I
Because
thought he
remember, there
got
was the
in.
famous holdout. He
Yeah.
didn't show like he is. Now that's a guy that would be an interesting. What would you pay?
Yeah.
Right. If he's free of all of the stuff and now he's looking around, what do you pay?
Well, like here's a good question. If given the opportunity, if you had to choose between these two edge rushers to go after in free agency, Josh Sweat or Chase Young?
Hassan Reddick dressed for 10 games, started 2,
I
and
told
had
you,
1
yeah.
sack.
I told you he played. I
I
knew I
have-
saw him out there
I
one
have
game.
no recollection of this.
Because he wanted that money. He wanted to be able to go into free
I
agency.
guess he showed up. They didn't seem to put him into the game a whole lot.
No, but he did it so he can go into free
I
agency.
guess, yeah.
So
He'll be 31. That would be an interesting. What would
Yeah.
you pay? Now that would be more. You probably get him a little lower, which is kind of why you go back and say, Hassan, is that really a smart move to do what you did there?
It wasn't. It really wasn't.
Did you gain money or
Nope.
lose money by doing what you did?
But
Lost a lot.
let me throw this question back out at you.
Mhm.
Would you go after if it's just it's a binary choice? Would you go after Josh Sweat, who's riding high, Super Bowl champion, game of his life in the Super Bowl, or Chase Young, who was the number 2 overall pick 5 years ago, has been traded a couple of times, hasn't quite lived up to expectations, probably fits into that Jadeveon Clowney type journeyman pass rusher.
Where the shine is off the apple.
Right. But you're hoping that there's still a glimmer of that Chase Young that was drafted in there. Would you rather take a shot on Chase Young, or would you rather pay a little bit more money and hope that Josh Sweat's Super Bowl performance was the start of something new?
I want to know more. I would have to really get my scouts to come back to me and say, all right, tell me why we think Chase Young has not been what he looked like on draft day. And even I feel like Chase Young, didn't he have some pretty good production his first year or two?
Yeah, he had so first year he did have some really good production. Then the second year he missed half the season. Then the third year,
so is he
only
just
played 3 games. He's been injured.
So
more than anything.
so that
yeah.
might be like that's really
That's
the
his
thing. If
thing,
you're sitting
yeah.
there going, "Hey, this was the second pick," that's
Yeah.
not really smart. It's like, what are you getting now?
Mhm.
What is his body?
He had
What does the
5.5
film tell you?
sacks for the Saints last season.
So you watched
And
your
he
share
played
of
all
Saints
se- he
games.
played all
Did
17
Did he have a decent year as a role player? Like, what's he worth?
That's a good question. He certainly wasn't the Chase Young that was drafted 2nd overall. But I'm wondering.
You always have a stigma
Right.
when you're that guy.
Mhm.
Just like Corey Davis, he'll always have that tag. Like, well, he didn't do that much. He was a 5th pick draft. He was a good player, but
Yeah.
you couldn't get past the expectation when you're picked
Drafted that high.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the other issue, and this is not exclusive to football, is, well, he was a 1st-round pick, so he must be good. Like, even if he doesn't play up to the
after a
draft
certain point,
position.
it really is irrelevant where
Yeah.
you were picked.
Yeah.
Especially
doesn't matter.
when at the point where you become an unrestricted free agent. I don't think there's really any relevancy of where you were picked because that's ancient history.
Right. So it's like, I'm looking at some of the other edge rushers on this list, like Matthew Judon, who was traded from the Patriots to the Falcons. He's 32 years old. Like, do you want to get that much older? Chase Young, to his credit, is, I think, 25. So he's still young, which is another thing that kind of plays into it. Well, he was a 1st-round pick, and he's only 25. There's still room to grow, which is true in theory. In theory, communism works. In theory, I don't know. Would you rather take on Chase Young, hoping that he can reach his potential? Do you draft Abdul Carter and hope that he's the pass rusher of the future? There are some options here, but as we know in free agency, the best players don't typically get to free agency. They all have their deficiencies, but Josh Sweat, his bank account is going to thank him for his performance at the Super Bowl. I'm not sure the team that's signing him is going to be ultimately thrilled to write that check.
Of course, he's what he was able to do. It's almost like, in this situation, your last impression is going to be the first impression for some people. And the last impression was, damn, he played a hell of a game. So headed into free agency, that may be the first impression that when people think of Josh Sweat, they think of the Super Bowl, his Super Bowl performance. Again, I think Chase Young, because of the injury history, he's only played one full season one time. He didn't even play a full season his rookie year. He missed the game. That's what I'm worried about. Well, I guess he did play a full season because he got traded from Washington and then ended up with San Fran. And he played 7 games with Washington and 9 games with San Fran. So ultimately, he probably ended up playing the full season. So the 3 out of the 5 years, he's played the full. Well, 2 out of 5 years he's played the full season. But I'm just worried about his injury history. But he can say the last 2 years I have stayed healthy for the most part. Well, if that's the case, then the production is really not there. If you've been healthy over the last 2 seasons, where is the production? So now do I only have to I don't only have to worry about the potential of him getting injured again, but you've played 2 full seasons and you hadn't displayed number 1 overall sort of play the last couple of years. So I would be worried about that. But Josh Sweat, I'm telling you, listen, if you want to pay him 18, 19, $20 million, then man, you better hope it works. You better cross your fingers. But if you want to sign him for 10, 11, 12 with some incentives, okay, great. Let's roll.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the edge rusher situation for the Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1025. Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company while supplies last.
Hey, let's tell you about F&M Bank. We're going to take it to the bank again at 1:45 on Friday, and I will have my extra quarter of a point thanks to my brilliant argument about lemon lime Gatorade that was poured on the Eagles coach.
It's yellow.
That is green. It is green. We all know it's green. But I had to concede the commissioner did acquiesce a little bit. So I'll take the quarter of a point in my journey to try to win the contest. It's all brought to you by F&M Bank. We have a blast thanks to them, and they do such a great job. Their motto is banking made easy on purpose. Look, we're all people that don't like to spend a lot of time, at least most people that I know, getting into the finances and getting all. Look, you want your banking simplified, streamlined, so you can enjoy life. A little change can go a long way. You're looking for an easy way to save money? Check out the Smart Swipe debit card at F&M Bank. Their roundup feature, it simply rounds up everything to the nearest dollar. So every time you use that card, you're going to be saving money. It could be 70 cents one time. It could be 90 cents, could be 10 cents. But over time, every time you use your card, you're saving money. They put that money into your savings account. It's a great tool. They've got a lot of tools like that. Just go to myfmbank.com and find the nearest location and tell them you heard about that feature from me here on 102.5 The Game, Willie Donick. So a little change can make all the difference. F&M Bank, member FDIC.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 the game. Willie Donick slipping in some Gatorade talk during his live read there. It's still yellow. It doesn't matter what you say, my
Yeah,
friend.
no
I'm still
matter
bitter,
what.
but
I
I'll
know
take
you
my
are.
quarter point.
Oh, yeah.
But let's say,
decision's been
if
made.
you want to be that bitter, I can take the point away.
Hey,
I'm
yeah.
not.
We hadn't
I'm not-
reached that day yet, so he
I'm
can't
just
deduct
telling you that
points.
if this competition is decided by that quarter point, it's going to be
It's going to be very
There's
controversial.
going to be problems.
Same as if I come up short by
Yeah.
0.75 of a point.
So it's my responsibility to just blow Willie out of the water is what I need to do.
It shouldn't be a problem. I'm not having a good season.
So we talked about edge rusher, another position that the Titans need. Teron Davenport writes about this at ESPN.com. Wide receiver. He writes, Calvin Ridley is the only proven receiver under contract. Ridley led the Titans with 35 receptions, 819 yards, and 4 touchdowns on downfield targets, 10 or more air yards this past season, according to Next Gen Stats. All other Titans receivers combined for 32 receptions, 847 yards, and 10 touchdowns on such targets this past season. Ridley accounted for 49.2% of the Titans' air yards, the highest team share of any player in the NFL. Finding a playmaking X-receiver to complement Ridley would help Tennessee's offense immensely. The Titans could also use a chain-moving slot receiver who can work the middle of the field to make those crucial catches on third downs. Neither of you were interested in Cooper Kupp, who I think would solve the chain-moving slot receiver who can work the middle of the field and make those crucial catches on third downs. But I'm looking at the wide receiver market in free agency. There are some notable names. T. Higgins is not only the number one receiver, he's the number one free agent on many lists in the NFL. Chris Godwin is a free agent. Amari Cooper is a free agent. Stephon Diggs is a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins. Anybody want to give another go to DeAndre Hopkins?
That's a negative.
I don't want him to lose his love for the game even more. Marquise Hollywood Brown is a free agent. Darius Slayton is a free agent. Keenan Allen. So there are some options there, some veteran
roulette.
options.
It's roulette. You get every one of those guys is. You can say, well, maybe.
Listen, the Titans don't do it. Don't do it. If you're going to get another wide receiver, this wide receiver class outside of T. Higgins is, I don't think it moves the needle for you this year in free agency. Now, if you can get T. Higgins, then obviously that moves the needle immensely. But these other guys, Stephon Diggs coming off an injury, I mean, how much help is he going to be to you coming off that injury? DeAndre Hopkins, that's definitely
been there, done that.
Exactly, that's a no. So you start to look down. Well, who else could we, and there will be individuals that are cut because of what the team deems salary cap reasons. So there may be other guys added to the pool, but this pool of free agent wide receivers isn't a pool that I'm rushing out to jump in. Again, if you're looking for a mid-tier guy, possibly, then okay. You're looking for just somebody to add to your roster, possibly a third wide receiver. Okay, I get it. But they need a young guy. They need a young, explosive guy at that position. They've tried it before. It hadn't worked. They need to go get a young guy to couple with Calvin Ridley.
You know who that could be? Travis Hunter.
But again, is he worth the number one pick? That's the thing, because if I'm drafting a wide receiver, he's not worth the number one pick. Now, if I'm drafting him as an athlete, then yes. But if I want him to be my number one receiver or that number two guy, then I'm not drafting him that high. I look at other guys, maybe, and I'm not, say if they move off the first pick, they move down. I'm still not saying go out and get a wide receiver. Possibly wait until the second round. Tez Johnson, he will be out there for you in the second round, I believe. That's a guy that has explosiveness, guy that can play the slot, guy that has that ability to move laterally the way he needs to and very quickly, a guy that can get the ball and go, and you don't have to use a first round pick on him.
Field Yates has Tate McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona, who's projected to be the top receiver off the board. He has McMillan going 9th in the draft. I don't think the Titans are going to drop all the way down to 9, which the Saints have the 9th pick. But
Like the kid Isaiah Bond, will he be around out of Texas? Late in the first round, possibly, second round. Probably not, because he probably ended up running a 4.1 at the combine. So, or at his pro day, because I think he's a junior. No, he's a senior. I think he's a senior. But if he doesn't run at the combine, he's going to run at his pro day. So he's going to run about a 4.2, 4.1, somewhere around there.
Luther Burden, the receiver out of Missouri, is projected to be the 25th pick, according to Field Yates. The 29th pick to the Commanders, I don't want to butcher his name, the wide receiver out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka, is going 29th in this. So I'm wondering
if they can get, like, I like that kid's good. And I'm not saying anything that other people aren't saying. They've just had a run of some damn good wide receivers at Ohio State, and he fits the mold. I know he didn't get a lot of shine because of the freshman Smith. I get it. But this kid, he can flat out play, man. He may not have the top end speed, but he gets open and he catches the football. And he's just smooth, kind of like Garrett Wilson and those guys. He's just smooth at what he does. But will he be around potentially for the Titans in the second round? It doesn't look like if they're projecting him a late first rounder. But say if he slips out of the first round, which I think there is a possibility, then yeah, I would be looking to get him.
Someone says, seems like you're forgetting about Treylon Burks. That's Lenny on our text line.
Stop it. Stop. Hey, y'all, listen, I love Treylon Burks. Y'all know it.
I can't detect sarcasm. I don't know if you're being
I feel
sarcastic.
I feel like there's some sarcasm.
I hope you're being sarcastic.
I can read the tone.
Okay. There is no, I don't know if he's saying
this is the mystery of texting.
Seems like you're forgetting about Treylon Burks. Like, is that serious or sarcastic?
Yeah, I think that's more so sarcasm than anything.
Treylon Burks is on the team, but that ship has sailed, my friend.
Yeah, Treylon, listen, I've said all I could say about Treylon Burks, and it just hadn't worked out for the Titans, and for him at this point. So I'm not sure how much they are even looking at Treylon Burks. Because when Brian Callahan said that about the whole surgery thing,
yes,
and it was like an afterthought, I was like, yeah, they're done with him. They're done with him. Anytime your coach is like, oh, yeah, he did have surgery. Not today, but last week. Like, isn't that a big deal, sort of, kind of? Wouldn't it be? But to them, it's not, because they don't see him in the future unless something drastically changes. So as far as free agency, I'm not touching free agency as far as wide receiver unless it's like in July sometime, and it get to that point where, okay, I may need another veteran guy. But from the jump, I'm not looking to fill that spot with a veteran guy. I'm looking to fill that spot with a young guy. So then you can couple him with Ridley, and as Ridley's fading out, he can now fade in as your number one.
It's a big grocery list that they need. And what do they need to fill the grocery list? More picks.
More grocery bags.
More picks. Yeah, more grocery bags.
Exactly.
Can you get
big old cart.
Can you get a sale on picks?
We ain't going to
5 picks get 1 free.
We're not a restaurant.
If you have somebody hired, who is it? I think it's the 49ers got extra picks when D'Amico Ryans was hired by the Houston. Yeah, that's one way to get extra picks.
Well,
they used to be
do they have any compensatory picks this year?
Yeah, I don't know if they do, but that is another way you get free picks.
My man,
right?
TD's back there. Do they have any compensatory picks? No, they don't. They don't have any. So there you go. That would have been some
grocery
extra
list, though.
Yeah,
if you got limited picks.
But some teams are kind of strategic in doing that. They know that if they bring this guy on, they release him, they will get a compensatory pick. I think Baltimore does that with a few of their guys.
They didn't get a compensatory pick for Andre Dillard?
Whoops. They should have been.
They should have had to give one.
Too soon?
They should have had to give one to somebody.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the pain and suffering thing. We're sorry you had to play Andre Dillard so much. Here's a 4th round pick.
Well, that'd be great if you could do that.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just me in regards to receivers. Other people may look at it somewhere else. And it's not that I don't like Stephon Diggs, but he just got injured and he's getting older. And I said this, the same thing I said about Woods. When people were like, bring him in. And I was like, he just came off a knee injury. What the hell are y'all talking about? I love the old Woods before the injury. He was a hell of a player. But it's an injury to his knee and he's getting older. No, bring him in. And what happened? It's the same thing that I believe will happen with Stephon Diggs. If he didn't have an injury, then yeah, bring him in. He's a productive guy. But he's coming off a knee injury. So I don't even want to take on that cap, any monies that I would have to pay him.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on that. We'll wrap up the show next. Willie Dunnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
All right, let's talk League Company. Four Nations Face-Off gets going tonight. You can check that out. That is why the NHL's on a little break, and the Predators will not play until a week from Saturday. Our coverage of the Predators all season long is brought to you in part by League Company. Go to leaguecompany.com or dial them up at 615-567-1000. Of course, League Company has been in service since 1944. They've got great services when it comes to your needs. If you have an issue with maintenance at home or at work, they are just a phone call away or an online appointment away. You don't even have to pick up the phone. Go on your computer, make an online appointment. The maintenance problem will be on the docket. They'll come out, fix the problem. You can move on with your workday, get on home, watch the Four Nations face off tonight or your favorite college basketball game, anything that's going on. That's what life is about with League Company. They'll get you the good service. 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. League Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Stillman and Company coming up next on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Some Predators-related news. It's been announced that UC Saros, who is participating in the Four Nations Face-Off tournament, will start in net for Finland tomorrow against the U.S. So the goaltending matchup tomorrow night, that game is at 7. Connor Hellebuck for the Americans, UC Saros for the Finns. The tournament starts tonight at 7. Canada against Sweden. Philip Forsberg, Gus Nyquist on Team Sweden against the vaunted Team Canada. If you are a hockey fan of any kind, I highly recommend you take time to watch these games. It has been nearly 10 years since we've seen NHL players in an international type tournament like this. It was the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. So if you're looking for, look, it's been a rough go for the Predators. You haven't watched a lot of great hockey this season. If you're a Predators fan, give yourself a bit of a palate cleanser. Watch these games. They're going to be great. Canada and Sweden tonight, U.S. and Finland tomorrow, UC Saros starting in net for the Finns on Thursday.
The Finland's got a problem. They have had the best defenseman from Finland in the game by far, Miro Heiskanen, who can control a game on his own, go down with an injury. He's not playing. And they are thin there. There's a couple other guys that are good, solid NHL defensemen that have been hurt as well. So their third pair is barely an NHL defense pair. That's not good news with who they have to play. So UC Saros will have, I think, a big job that he has to do. Now, we know Finland, the way they play, they will gut it out. They will not try to outgun you, and they won't have a choice, I think, with the teams that they're playing against in this tournament. But so I'm curious to see how Saros does on this stage. But it is interesting. Justus Annunen is from Finland last I checked. Is he not?
He is.
So by Jared's thinking that Annunen is better than Saros, Annunen should be starting tonight or tomorrow, right? Shouldn't he?
In theory.
Yeah, in theory.
I don't hear anybody really talking about that. They have 3 goalies on the team. Is Annunen one of them?
No.
I'm just glad, by the way. I'm just glad. By the way,
he's so good. I thought he was.
I thought he was.
Another Finnish
Annunen
goalie.
is a good goalie, but Finland's got a lot of good goalies. They have 3 spots.
Another Finnish goalie on the team is Kevin Lankinen.
Yes, he is.
And I'm just glad that Lankinen is not starting this game, because if he was starting ahead of Saros, that would add more fuel to the fire. I will give
Jared, but if you were going by wins,
yes,
which Jared thinks is all important, then you would start Lankinen, right?
Yes.
Because Lankinen plays on a better team that plays a very defensive system, and they have the best defenseman, I think, in the world right now in Quinn Hughes, who is injured right now. That's probably the biggest issue for Team USA. They've got a great team. I'm really excited from a US of A. Let's get the flag out. Let's going. Let's get going. I really like their chances, but not having Quinn Hughes is a tough one. He can't play in this tournament. But Lankinen has been a really big savior for Vancouver. But yet, what does Finland think? They still go with Saros. If you were just going by the stats, you would clearly go with Lankinen, right? But they know that the team Lankinen plays for is way better and has played better in front of Lankinen than Saros. Now, it will be interesting because if Saros doesn't have a good game, let's see what you have to get it done, right? You got to win 2 out of 3
right, so
to get to the final and win this thing.
Right. So it's a round robin tournament. So each country will play the other once. There's a point system. The top two teams after the round robin is over will play in a championship game. So UC Saros could play up to 4 games. Finland could play up to 4 games. But each team is guaranteed 3 games. And I will give Jared a modicum, the smallest crumb of credit when I say this. Somebody texted into the show yesterday when he was going on his thing about UC Saros and said, if UC Saros plays well in this tournament, will Jared reconsider his position? And he was open to it because, according to him, that would mean The Predators have bigger problems. It's not Saros, which I think we all already know. It's not just Saros this season. But I will give Jared the smallest amount of credit I possibly can for at least being open-minded to the idea that if UC Saros has an incredible performance in this tournament, that maybe he'll back off.
I'm hoping that in a roundabout way, just this showcase type of game can get him back on his A game, because I'm the first to tell you that he has not been on his A game for a large portion of this season. He has not had a great year, especially in the last month and a half, right? I think early on he did have his A game. Last year, it was around this time that he found his A game and played brilliantly down the stretch for the Predators. I'm curious what this tournament does or doesn't do for his mindset, just a fresh start, right? Playing with different people representing your country, all of these things, because he hasn't had his best year for the Predators, but that's in the context of the entire team has struggled, in particularly the defense in front of him and goal support. He's had the lowest goal support in the NHL. This is why Finland is going with him. They realize that. And he's had a very poor defense in front of him.
So the game tonight, Canada and Sweden, you can watch on TNT. The game tomorrow, US and Finland, you can watch on ESPN.
So TNT tonight and
Yes.
ESPN tomorrow. Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah, so TNT tonight, ESPN tomorrow. Then a doubleheader on Saturday on ABC. Finland and Sweden at 1 o'clock, well, 12 o'clock Central, and the US and Canada at 7, which is going to be incredible. The game's in Montreal, by the way, the US and Canada game.
Oh, man.
It'll
be an atmosphere.
Yeah, like I'm looking forward to watching this tournament. As I said, the Predators haven't given us their best effort this season. There have been a lot of unwatchable games. So I'm hoping that this tournament will, as I said, serve as a palate cleanser for us hockey fans starving for some great hockey. I know we talked about Vanderbilt's loss to Auburn 80-68. Another big game in the SEC last night, Kentucky defeating Tennessee 75-64. So Tennessee moves up to they moved down to number 5, I think. And Suffray lost to Kentucky. I mean, this is how incredible the SEC is. Tennessee is the 5th ranked team in the country. Kentucky is 15th. Tennessee is now 7-5 in the SEC, and Kentucky is 6-5 in the SEC. Willie, I'm curious.
Incredible.
Yes, we were talking about this before you came on. Gentry Estes had a column in the Tennessean after the game last night, talking about, not to take away anything from what Mark Byington has been able to do at Vanderbilt this season. It's just unfortunate that that turnaround came this season when the SEC was so loaded that it capped the ceiling for this Vanderbilt team more than maybe in another conference.
But it could be the reason that gets them in if they can. And D Mace and I went through the next 5 games. D Mace makes a good point. If you can just get 2 of those 5, you really feel good. But getting 2 of the 5 based on the 5 teams they're playing, you could lose all 5.
Yeah.
You're going to be an underdog likely in all 5. And then you've got no cupcakes in the last 2 games, Arkansas at home, Georgia on the road. So I think you need a total of 3. And so I think in some years, if you go 8-10 in your league, you're thinking, oh boy, that's not going to be good enough to get into the tournament. So it's a double-edged sword. So to sort of play off of what Gentry's saying, the greatness of the SEC can be the reason you get in if you can survive it. And it remains to be seen whether they can survive it. But how about these matchups coming up? Alabama's about to play Auburn twice down the stretch here. Those 2 games are going to be heavyweight battles because I think Alabama's got that same kind of we can beat you any way you want to play. Although Alabama is pretty unique in that they want to beat you 100-95. And Auburn, because of they're willing to play that way if you want. Yeah. That could be a lot of fun to watch.
That's on Saturday afternoon, number 1 Auburn at number 2 Alabama.
And how about Kentucky? Kentucky's beaten Tennessee twice, but they've had some losses where you're scratching your head going, what? And then Tennessee's got to be going, why can't we beat Kentucky? We went to Auburn. If you're a Tennessee fan, we went to Auburn and we're right there within 2. And yet we've lost both times to Kentucky. This has been a little bit of a strange year for Tennessee, but they're still in the hunt for a 1 seed, even though that didn't help them much last night.
Hey, it's the SEC. Who would have ever thought that the SEC would have the best basketball conference in the nation.
As an ACC purist, I certainly would never have imagined
As a
that.
Big Ten peers, I would have never thought the SEC would have the top.
Willie knew
rank.
it all along.
And speaking of the ACC, what a great traditional rivalry you have going on today for your Duke
Oh,
Blue
I
Devils.
can't wait.
No.
The Golden Bears of California.
Golden Bears of California.
Had to carry
the
the
Atlantic
All
Coast
Coast
Conference. The
Conference.
Atlantic Coast Conference. Now, that there is a little piece of history there, though.
What's that?
Jason Kidd, 1993, Cal Bears beat Bobby Hurley and the Duke Blue Devils in that great run. Of course, the Duke was finals champion. And so senior year for Bobby Hurley, they got put out by Jason Kidd and Cal pretty early in the term. But I know that's a bitter memory for you. Oh, wait a minute, Adam, were you even, how old were you in 93?
4.
Okay.
That'll do it for us today. Snowman and Company coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Wednesday. Peace.